based game.
Yugioh Master Duel came out, and I want to talk about it. If you don't know what Yugioh Master Duel is, it is a free-to-play, cross-platform mobile game that is an auto simulator for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. Now, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! On and off for a couple years now. I really got back into it big time about a year or two ago, and I feel like I've gotten familiar with it enough to be able to properly judge this new simulator that's come out, which has really been making a lot of headway. It's actually surprising at how many people are getting into the game now from just this simulator alone. But anyway, enough introductions, let's just dive into this. So I'm going to be talking about this game from two different angles. The first I'm going to be seeing is how well it does at introducing new/returning people to all the new stuff that's come into the game since they may have quit. We're talking about all the new summoning mechanics, all the rule changes. I want to see that if you're a new player, does this game fully acclimate you to it well enough to where you can understand what's going on and properly participate in it. And for people who are returning to the game, how good is this format? Like, is the way Master Duel set things up a good idea? Is there anything they can change? Like, what is the state of the game and the way it is impacting or could impact the TCG as a whole? So let's start with the angle of new players and returning players who are just not familiar with anything and want to get back into the game. First of all, I gotta say, this game is shockingly bad for new players. If you haven't kept up with the discourse surrounding the game, people are basically wandering in clueless, thinking they're going to be playing Playground Yu-Gi-Oh! And getting fucking curb stomped by half the meta decks in the current format right now. And while part of the reason this may be happening is because they maybe just aren't willing to learn more than their baseline understanding of the game, I think a majority of this problem does rest on Master Duel itself. Master Duel only has one tutorial in it, and that is its solo mode. The solo mode is divided into different campaigns based on the decks that they give you, where the idea is that when you pick them up, you're going to get a basic understanding of how they work and see different deck building synergy ideas that you can maybe put together and try out for yourself. They do this through a series of tutorial duels where they give you a loner deck mixed with a bunch of different cards for free that you can just try out for that duel and that duel alone. The problem is these tutorials are all very bad, and the reason why they're bad is because a lot of them will start out with just basic 1 to 2 card combos that give you only a very boring baseline understanding of what a deck can do. And the way they do this is by giving you a series of commands on telling you what to click and where to put things. It is extremely hand-holdy, and if you're not thoroughly reading the card text and you just click the buttons that they tell you to click, you're really not learning how to play a deck. You're just listening to someone give you commands and then you copy them verbatim, and then you just see a screen that says you did well and now you know enough to go into another real duel. So then they throw you into this mode where they start giving you more cards in the archetype than what they were giving you for the tutorial. So you'll start to get different cards that you haven't seen before that effectively do the same thing because the deck has one gimmick and one gimmick alone. Which is fine, right? You learn by doing. But then things get a bit fucky when they start mix and matching archetypes with each other that they did not teach you about, that have their own gimmicks that sometimes don't even synergize that well with what you're using. Like, for example, at some point in the game, you get introduced to this deck called the Megaliths. Now, the Megaliths are really cool ritual cards that when you ritual summon them, they can use effects to continuously ritual summon themselves or other ritual monsters from your hand out onto the field, using themselves as material for them. Now, the first duel where you really get to experiment with this specific deck involves you playing only in archetype. You're not going to see any other card that has the word Megalith in its name in the deck they give you. But when you start doing the side content where you unlock the gate to play different combinations of cards with the Megalith deck, you start running into some really shitty combinations where the game thinks that it can combine any ritual card with the Megaliths and have it excel, which leads to a bunch of games where you're just bricking constantly and you're not really understanding why, as you're using these mixed and matched cards that the game never even introduced you to, because believe it or not, a lot of the times they'll just put cards in your decks where they're from these decks that you were never given a tutorial for. So by the game's logic, if we're following that you're learning about these as you play through these tutorial modes, you never got any sort of knowledge about this stuff. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what these cards do. You don't know what their gimmick is. You just know that they're the same type of card as what you're using, but oftentimes that's not enough to have a deck actually work. It just looks like they put a bunch of random bullshit together, which is really dumb. Like, what the fuck, dude? The other problem is that a lot of these decks that they give you have little to no competitive viability whatsoever. Like, by the modern game standards, the way it's progressed, a lot of these decks are just completely obsolete. But if you're new to the game and you have no knowledge of what the modern metagame is, you're not gonna know this. You're just gonna find the deck that you like from the solo mode that you're the most familiar with and start building it because you have a limited supply of gems to build your decks in this game, so why not spend it on something that you're familiar with, that you've had practice with? But what you don't know is you're wandering straight into a fucking wall that is what the game actually is. And that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now who are playing ranked for the first time after coming back for all these years, because there's no adequate way to prepare them for what they're about to deal with. And this leads me to another point I want to make about how this game is really bad for teaching new people / returning people. It's that there is just crucial information that you really need to know about the rulings for this game that is just missing. When you boot up the game for the first time and you do the tutorial, all it's gonna do is give you the same hand-holdy walkthrough it gives you in the solo mode, but for all the summoning mechanics in the game. And sure, it's nice and all that you now understand what the words Synchro Summon, Fusion Summon, and Xyz Summon mean, but knowing what those things mean aren't gonna help you when you run into really weird ruling situations that you had no way of knowing were gonna come up because the game never prepared you for them. For example, let's go back to the Megaliths again. I want you to keep in mind again that this is a deck specifically given to you in the solo mode where you have a complete tutorial on how it works. Let's say you take this deck and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and build this deck. So you find a bunch of ritual cards, you find a bunch of synergies that aren't what they give you in the tutorial mode that actually do work, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start playing the game now. Well, let's say you hit a point where you want to ritual summon a Megalith monster and you want to use several monsters in your hand, because the Megaliths say that when you ritual summon them, you are allowed to use materials that have a level that is equal to or greater than the level of the monster that you're trying to summon. Well, let's say that you go in knowing this and you try to ritual summon using basically several monsters on your field that far exceed the level requirement for the monster you're trying to summon. And then halfway through doing this, you're gonna notice that you can't actually use all these monsters, and the game is gonna automatically summon whatever was in your hand before you were even finished sacrificing all the materials for it. And you're gonna sit there confused because the game never told you about something called the Pebble rule, which specifically states that you can't do that, which is really important to know because it's a rule that is very central to an archetype that you're trying to use. So there are times in the game where things just won't happen when you expect them to because there are specific rulings that you just didn't happen to know about because the game didn't prepare you for them. And these rulings are oftentimes very important to know if you're playing manually, but in an auto simulator like this, they have no reason to tell you because the game will just handle it itself. When you play Yu-Gi-Oh, it's not enough to just pick up a deck you loosely understand and use it. There is a whole set of grammar dedicated for how these cards are written, which is essential to understand if you're trying to play a deck. So for solo mode, you have a tutorial that 1, doesn't teach you the deck, 2, it misses basic ruling understanding that you really should know, and 3, it gives you really bad deck suggestions that get crushed by the modern meta, to the point where you can sometimes use all of your free-to-play gems on decks that are basically complete garbage because they fell out of favor years and years ago. So overall, from the new player perspective, if you're gonna get into this game, I'd say you should probably do some reading up on how the game works prior to this point, and only treat the solo mode like a sort of gimmick mode where you get a really baseline understanding of what's going on, but don't really take it to heart. You still need to do outside research. Overall, solo mode, big failure. Anyway, now to the good stuff. How is it as a game for people who understand it? For people who are well aware of the modern meta, for people who are looking for a change to the current format, how are things going? Well, overall, I'd say things are relatively fun. Despite complaining a lot, Yu-Gi-Oh has been a game where we've kind of just adapted to whatever crap has been thrown at us. And right now, that crap is like a majority of the ban list being basically unleashed because we are working on the OCG ban list. And not only is it the OCG ban list, but it's an OCG ban list from, I believe, several months ago. So it's not really up to date either. And this has led to a lot of people calling it a temporary format because we all readily expect a lot of the current meta cards right now that are dominating to get hit pretty significantly as they start implementing newer versions of the ban list. How that's going to happen, we're not really sure, but people are still doom prepping, and I'd suggest you do the same by starting to hoard your gems on the current ban shit that people are using right now. Like, take advantage of the resources you got and start just shoveling everything into your back pockets because holy fuck, dude, we got a lot to talk about. So first of all, the best of one system. If you don't know, the ranked mode is a best of one. It's very similar to Duel Links in that way. And I get why they did this. The idea is that it's going to be a mobile game, right? So they want you to just get in, play a quick game of Yu-Gi-Oh, and get out. But what has resulted from this is a lot of the meta being dominated by this really weird mishmash of going first and second cards. And the idea is to try and basically fuck your opponent out of the game by just surprising them with something that they weren't expecting. Now, people have been trying to counter this by building specifically for a lot of these meta decks that they're starting to see. Like, I know there are a lot of people main decking these very specific cards to stop decks like Drytron and Eldritch. And honestly, that's to be expected. That's just how the game goes. When you see a lot of strategies dominating, people are always going to start building to counter it. The only difference is that you're really limited to what you can put into your main deck whilst trying to keep it consistent. And in a best of one, where there's no side decking and you can't actually side in different answers to different decks, you kind of just have to hope you put in the right cards and that you're not just going to get surprised by something out of nowhere. Usually, because the power level of the meta decks is so consistently high, it's really rare that you're going to run into some random ass shit that's going to play through something that you just could not have expected. But on the other hand, you can't really prepare for everything. So at some point, you're going to run into a matchup that's just going to basically destroy you in every possible way. Now, personally, I'm kind of mixed on this, because on one hand, I would like to get better with the deck I'm using. So when you have the opportunity to side, there's a good chance you're going to run into cards from your opponent that were specifically meant to deal with whatever you're playing. And that really puts me in a situation where I can improve with the deck I'm using because I will have to play through more. And since I'm playing a deck like Drytron, that dies to like very specific hand traps that people will always keep on hand to side in the event it shows up. And putting me in these situations where I have to learn how to get through these types of things helps me improve as a player. But when I'm playing a game and my opponent just gets unlucky in their opening hand and then I happen to be going first, well, they're just boned and they don't really have a chance to bounce back from that with a game 2 or 3. They just get like screwed over by me because, you know, I just happened to draw the god hand and they didn't. And they just can't play through a full Drytron board. Like, even if you put in a bunch of cards that are specifically meant to deal with these types of things, like Forbidden Droplet and Max C, sometimes the deck can just play through them, and if you just didn't draw enough, well, oops. And then let's say that you draw all of them and then I don't know about this, so I'm going against you, and well, when it's too late, you just hit me with all the hand traps in the book, I just die and I couldn't even respond. So from both angles, I get screwed over and I can't deal with it by siding in my own cards to prepare against you. You get screwed over if you can't side against me, and there's just this whole layer of strategy that is just completely missing from this best of one format. Now in casuals, that's more, you know, okay, right? But when your rank is on the line and they're trying to treat this like a serious ranked mode, it really kind of devalues some of the victories and losses that you'll end up experiencing while you play. I am personally not a big fan of it. I would wish that they had a second mode with siding in it, but for the most part, it's just another thing that you have to account for while you play. That's it. And kind of bridging off of this whole ranked mode discussion, I want to talk about the in-game economy and how that impacts deck building. So like I mentioned in the first part of this video, it's really shitty for new players when they waste all their free gems to make decks that just suck and can't perform well. But on the other hand, let's say I make a deck that can perform very well and gets me to the top of ranked, which I did happen to do, thankfully. Once you hit that point, there really is nothing left for you to do. At some point in the game, after you use up all the gems they give you for free, the only way to get gems is by logging in or completing random missions that they give you. And these missions pay out pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. You're really getting 50 to 100 gems per mission, and you usually need like over 1,000 to get really good pulls that you could smelt down in their crafting system. And the crafting system for a lot of the good cards that are meta relevant right now is pretty frustrating. Like, you're gonna blow through a lot of gems really fast getting a lot of these cards. Thankfully, I haven't had to spend a dime on the game yet, but it is leading to a point where I have to aimlessly grind ranked just to get gems, just so I can build a deck that I'm probably not even gonna use because I already hit max rank. Like, it's great that I made a deck and all, but there's really nothing left for me to grind with it. If anything, your time would probably be better spent getting all of the staple cards before half the ban list kicks in and just removes all of the ridiculously broken shit we've been using for the better part of the past few days. But aside from that, the fact that you can actually make a meta viable deck for relatively cheap at the start of the game is pretty nice, I'm not gonna lie. It is much better than Duel Links, where everything was randomized and it is just really hard to get the cards you need. Like, the grind is way toned down. in this game, which is pretty good for a gacha game. I really wouldn't expect this from a Yu-Gi-Oh game, but here we are, so. Okay, the last thing I'll talk about for returning players, the elephant in the room that everyone is debating about for some reason, is Max C, okay? Max C is in the format. Honestly, I personally haven't had too much of a problem with it, but I can definitely see how it is a massive turn ender. I hear all the arguments, I just don't care. When it starts annoying me, then I will care, okay? Then I'll be against it, but for now, as long as it is not bothering me personally, I'll be fine with it. So that is all I have to say for returning players. If you're interested in a version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where a lot of the ban list is removed and it is kind of the Wild West for a bunch of really insane decks that are just running a shit ton of floodgates or just trying to shit on you while going second, then this is the game for you. It is so chaotic that I actually do kind of find it fun. And the fact that there's all these really cool animations and sound effects with this really awesome music playing in the background makes it really hype when all you're doing is just fighting a deck that is trying to lock you out of the game with skill drain. Very based, very gaming, very based gaming, I must say. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about Master Duel. I look forward to seeing all the new stuff they're gonna be adding to the game and how the ban list is going to evolve to where everyone is gonna hate it and complain again. I have been CE53 based gaming D's Nutsicus, and I'm about to summon Blue Eyes White Cum Dragon on my 70-second summon to make you write a large paragraph about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Has failed you on Twitter. And I'm going to normal summon out.
Alright guys, Speedroid, Den Daiko. I'm nice, baby.